Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Maria in English, then you must like this video if you are visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Maria. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it all. The interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which op platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Maria is a 2024 biographical psychological drama film about opera singer Maria Callas. It is directed by Pablo Larraín, written by Stephen Knight, and is an international co-production between Italy, Germany, and the United States. The film stars Angelina Jolie in the title role, along with Pierfrancesco Favino, Alba Rohrwacher, Haluk Bilginer, and Cody Smith-McPhee in supporting roles. It is the third film in Larraín's trilogy of important 20th century women, following Jackie, 2016, and Spencer, 2021. The film premiered at the 81st Venice International Film Festival on August 29, 2024, where it competed for the Golden Lion and received generally positive reviews from critics, who singled out Jolie's performance for praise. It was released in select theaters in the United States on November 27, 2024, before streaming on Netflix on December 11th. It will later be theatrically released in Italy by 01 Distribution on January 1, 2025, and in Germany by StudioCanal on February 6th. Premise: the film is reportedly set during Callas's final years in the 1970s when she was living in Paris. Cast Angelina Jolie as Maria Callas, Aggelina Papadopoulou as young Maria, Pierfrancesco Favino as Ferruccio, Alba Rohrwacher as Bruna, Haluk Bilginer as Aristotle Onassis, Cody Smith-McPhee as Mandrax, Valeria Galino as Jacinthi Callas, Alessandro Bressanello as Giovanni Battista Meneghini, Casper Philipson as John F. Kennedy. Production: Pablo Larraín signed on to direct, working from a script by Stephen Knight. The film is produced by Juan de Dios Larraín for Fabula, Lorenzo Mieli for the Apartment Pictures, a Fremantle company, and Jonas Dornbach for Complicen Film. Angelina Jolie came aboard the project as the eponymous Maria in October 2022. Filming got underway in Budapest in October 2023, with other filming locations including Paris, Greece, and Milan. Some material was also filmed at the La Scala Opera House. Beforehand, production designer Guy Hendricks Dias worked with Larraín on the visual concept, helping fuse the 1940 to 1970s style with the surreal musical sequences. According to the film's producers, no new fur was sourced for Jolie's garments, which are based on Callas's original garments, with consultation with animal rights groups such as PETA regarding vintage fur items worn in the film from the archive collection of costume designer Massimo Cantini Perini. To prepare for her role, Jolie spent 7 months training to sing opera. The scenes set during Callas' heyday, an estimated 90 to 95% of Callas' original recordings were used, with Jolie lip-syncing along to these songs. However, Jolie's singing comes to the fore during the film's final act. Release: the film had its world premiere at the 81st Venice International Film Festival on August 29, 2024, where it competed for the Golden Lion. On the day before its premiere, the film's U.S. distribution rights were acquired by Netflix. Following the premiere, Film Nation Entertainment handled some of the film's international distribution deals, with 01 Distribution handling its release in Italy, and StudioCanal handling its release in the United Kingdom, Germany, and Poland. It was released in select theaters in the United States on November 27, 2024, before streaming on Netflix on December 11th. It will later be theatrically released in Italy on January 1, 2025, in the UK and Ireland on January 10th, and in Germany on February 6th. Reception. Critical reception. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 76% of 96 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.7/10. The website's consensus reads, Angelina Jolie unveils new highs within her emotional register in Pablo Larraín's Maria, keeping this tragic biopic compelling even when its theatrics go off-key. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 65 out of 100 based on 37 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. The film received an 8-minute standing ovation at the Sala Grande Theater during its world premiere, reducing Angelina Jolie to tears. Even if he doesn't exactly go there in his cinema, Pablo Larraín often obliquely flirts with horror. The hints were there in the fanatical nature of the titular Tony Manero character, a dancer unnervingly obsessed with John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. And they were all the more obvious in his gorgeous political satire El Conde, one of 2023's boldest cinematic outings that imagined Pinochet as a 250-year-old vampire. To the careful eye, the director's genre exploits elevated much of his ingenious, gradually heartbreaking psychodramas, Jackie and Spencer II, his pair of otherworldly films on the troubled lives of legendary 20th-century women. Now with Maria, about the final days of the iconic American Greek soprano Maria Callas, Larraín turns his historic women movies into a near-perfect trilogy, giving us a stunning conclusion to his series. Upon seeing Maria for the first time months ago at the Telluride Film Festival and revisiting it several times thereafter, this critic pondered what made Maria not only the gentlest, but the best of the three. And the answer was perhaps always obvious. As an opera connoisseur, Larraín is proudly, and often sentimentally, protective of one of the art form's most groundbreaking singers throughout Maria, a feature that was prominent neither in Jackie nor Spencer. It's not that the psychodramatic dreads we feel in those former two films aren't a part of Maria. For everyone who's ever feared losing a big part of what defines them, and for everyone who's opened their hearts to something they love so widely and unrestrictedly, only to see various forms of cruelty sneak in, this generous and beautiful picture ought to be a gut punch. But you can often sense that Larraín, among the most intuitive filmmakers working today, almost wants to shield Callas from the harmful grip of those cruelties. While her end is inevitable in the film, Callas died in 1977 at the young age of 53, you will be disarmed, even moved to tears, experiencing Larraín's care for her in Maria, which is essentially a compassionate ghost story on the beloved things we lose as they continue to deteriorate and slip through our fingers against our will. In a queenly performance of poise and mystique, Angelina Jolie plays Callas with an ethereal presence, grasping the intense grief of the once-in-a-generation singer who's been losing her voice. In the beginning, Jolie, through Ed Lachman's glorious, high-contrast black-and-white lensing, looks straight at the camera as her defiant Callas sings Ave Maria from Verdi's Otello, perhaps both as a little prayer to her past and as a reckoning with her present. The voice we hear, both in this scene and in the several arias we'd get to hear later on, belongs to Callas for sure, at least for the most past, as Laurent reportedly has mixed in drips of Jolie's voice in there too. But that doesn't mean Jolie isn't doing her own singing. She is, as evidenced in the way that she stretches her facial muscles and engages her entire body in the process. But she is subtle in those signifiers, as one has to be while embodying Callas. The famed soprano was effortless in navigating her range and hitting some impossibly high notes. Music simply and silkily poured out of her, an artistic flair stylishly internalized and portrayed by Jolie. A perceptive performer who can sometimes be a tad cold to the touch, Jolie gives her career-best performance as she steers Callas's ups and downs during the singer's final days, almost all of it empathetically imagined by Larraín and screenwriter Stephen Knight. She floats around her grand Paris apartment, an elegant and expansive space of gothic hues that envelops Callas in a cocoon of claustrophobia. Production designer Guy Hendricks Dias miraculously marries realism with wistfulness in his work. She seeks the acceptance of her devoted staff, particularly Bruna, Alba Rohrwacher, and Ferruccio, Pierfrancesco Favino, who bring much warmth and humor into the movie. She turns inward and has conversations with her own self when on a cocktail of medications, chiefly Mandrax, inventively personified by Cody Smith-McPhee. Elsewhere, she fends off nosy press and entitled fans. Meanwhile, she remembers both the glamour and the pain that she felt through a thunderous, rewarding, and sometimes heartbreaking past, one that eventually launched her into a rocky romance with the Greek-Argentine tycoon Aristotle Onassis, the terrific Turkish actor Haluk Bilginer. And she does all that sporting Massimo Cantini Parini's breathtaking costumes, both exact replicas of her known pieces and custom designs made for the movie. In honoring her journey, Larraín contrasts the film's Paris scenes of gorgeous colors and locales with Maria's black and white remembrances, not only trying to get to know Le Callas, but also hoping to infuse anyone who might be watching with the kind of affection he clearly feels for the diva. Dare to open your heart to his quest, and you might just feel that tenderness in a deep sense, even if you aren't an opera connoisseur. And that's perhaps the grandest miracle of this film. Like Callas herself aimed to do, Maria brings opera to the masses, not as a gimmick or high-minded endeavor, but as an act of generosity and understanding that art belongs to everyone who wants to appreciate it. In that, as Larraín purposely and studiously braids in areas into his narrative, full songs for the most part, and not frustratingly chopped-up snippets, and gives you a taste of everything from Bellini to Puccini to Donizetti, you'll feel like you've had a full musical meal with a hunger for a second helping. Will you get to know Callas by the end of Maria, or will she remain as a complete mystery? Rest assured, that's hardly the point of Larraín's cinematic ode. The reward is the beautiful and heart-swelling 2 hours you'll have the privilege of spending with Le Callas, alongside a director who wants nothing more than to share his immense love for her. In theaters now, on Netflix December 11th. Deadline's Read the Screenplay series, spotlighting the scripts behind the year's buzziest award season films, continues with Maria, the Maria Callas snapshot biopic starring Angelina Jolie. Pablo Larraín directed the screenplay, penned by Stephen Knight. For Larraín and Knight, the Netflix movie reteams them after 2021's Lady D biopic Spencer, which earned Kristen Stewart a Best Actress Oscar nomination. Larraín's 2016 movie Jackie, about Jackie Kennedy, also earned its star, Natalie Portman, an Oscar nom. Jolie, already an Oscar winner, here plays the famed opera star as she retreats to Paris after a glamorous and tumultuous life in the public eye. The pick reimagines the American Greek soprano in her final days as the diva reckons with her identity and life. In real life, Callas died of a heart attack at her Paris home in 1977 at age 53. For Knight, the Peaky Blinders creator, who was nominated for an original screenplay Oscar in 2004 for Dirty Pretty Things, he had the opportunity to build the Maria screenplay around Jolie, who had become attached to the project during the writing process. Angelina was always the first choice for the role, indeed the only choice, he says. Already an opera fan, he dove into research around the more remote and unknown elements of Maria's life, and was able to access first-hand testimony from Ferruccio Mezzadri, Callas' longtime butler. Once Knight and Larraín chose to focus on Callas's last days, Larraín said they found the interactions of the operas she sang could create parallels with her own life. I think this decision to focus on her last days helps to make sense of the flashbacks, as if a human being is recollecting and reviewing the span of her life before she leaves this planet forever, Knight says. It would be nice to think that all of us would get the opportunity to do this, and I wanted the experience of flashing back to not be torture for Maria, but a cathartic replay. She is rewinding the cassette and playing the important pieces. The film also stars Cody Smith-McPhee, Alba Rohrwacher, Pierfrancesco Favino, and Valeria Golino. Maria had its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival. It got a 10-minute ovation in its screening on the Lido and almost universal praise for Jolie's portrayal, and has since been making the big festival stops, Telluride, New York, AFI Fest, and London among them, on its way to select theaters beginning today. Netflix, which acquired the film just before it debuted at Venice, releases it on its platform December 6th, catching up to 3 big-name festival films that opened Wednesday at the specialty box office to start the extended U.S. Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Luca Guadagnino's Queer from A24 starring 007 Daniel Craig, Angelina Jolie as Maria Callas in Pablo Larraín's Maria from Netflix, both of which premiered at Venice, and Iranian filmmaker Mohammad Rasulov's The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which won a clutch of awards Cannes, including a special jury award. All three are in limited release, Maria the widest, in the midst of a great, big, busy few weeks at the box office, with Moana 2 setting records in the wake of Wicked and Gladiator 2. Indies are good counter-programming but face massive competition and have a hard time finding screens. If the box office continues to boom with big-budget studio fare, it will become clearer in the weeks and months ahead whether that lifts all boats, as many believe, or which ones. Queer is a literary adaptation of book of the same name by prominent beat writer William S. Burroughs, with screenplay by Justin Kuritzkis. Deadline's review says Craig nails the sardonic spirit of the writer and the book that was written in the early 50s but not published until 1985. Craig stars as William Lee, an American expat in 1950s Mexico City in his late 40s and leading a solitary life amidst a small American community. The arrival in town of Eugene Allerton, a young student, Drew Starkey, stirs William into finally establishing a meaningful connection with someone. Also stars Leslie Manville, Jason Schwartzman, Andra Ursuta, Michael Boremans, and David Lower. Opens on 7 screens across NY, Lincoln Square, Angelica, Alamo, Brooklyn, and LA, The Grove, Century City, Burbank, The Vista. Neon's The Seed of the Sacred Fig was written and directed by Rasulov, who filmed it entirely in secret and dramatically had to flee Iran right after shooting. Playing at 3 theaters, the Film Forum and Film Society of Lincoln Center in NY and AMC Century City in LA. The drama explores the conflict between tradition and progress in modern-day Iran through a middle-class family whose 2 daughters question their father's role in the government as student protests erupt in the streets. Stars Misa Zareh, Sohaila Golestani, Masa Rostami, Sitara Maleki, Niusha Akshi, Reza Akhlagi, Shiva Ordui, and Amina Irani. Other awards at Cannes includes the Fapresi Award from the International Federation of Film Critics, the Ecumenical Jury Award, Award of the French Theatres Association, and the Prix Chalet. It also played Telluride, was the centerpiece film at TIFF, and screened at the New York Film Festival. Deadline's review called the film a heartfelt, politically fiery melodrama. It's at 94% with critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Rasulov previously won Best Director in Uncertain Regard at Cannes for Bay Omid et Didar, Goodbye in 2011, earned the Fapresi Prize at Uncertain Regard for Das Nevesteha Nemesusand, Manuscripts Don't Burn, in 2013, and in 2017 won the main prize in the Uncertain Regard section for Lured, A Man of Integrity. Larraín's biopic Maria, starring Angelina Jolie as legendary opera singer Maria Callas, opens on about 60 screens ahead of a December 11th debut on Netflix. The streamer's films are different theatrical creatures for box office purposes, since it doesn't release grosses and the films become available on the platform in a few weeks. The iconic Greek-American diva died in 1977, aged 53, in her longtime Paris home after tumultuous life. The film takes place over 1 week as Callas unravels physically and psychologically, interspersed with flashbacks of the past. Written by Stephen Knight. See Deadline review. It's interesting that Jolie sings for the film, and the voice audiences here is a blend of Callas and Jolie's own voice. Also stars Pierfrancesco Favino and Alba Rohrwacher. It's the 3rd film by the Chilean director and opera buff about iconic women after Spencer, which starred Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana and Jackie with Natalie Portman. Other specialty openings, Music Box Films' genre label Doppelganger Releasing opens rowdy, offbeat Finnish comedy, Heavier Trip by directors Juuso Lahtio and Jukka Vidgren, marking the return of the film's fictional heavy metal band Impaled Rectum. In the follow-up to 2018's Heavy Trip, cast and crew reunite to continue the story of the world's most dangerous and charming metal band, including actors Johannes Holopainen, Samuli Jaskio, Max Ovaska, and Chico Hanwe. In Heavier Trip, the death metal band is incarcerated in a Norwegian prison when they discover that the guitarist's family is facing financial setbacks. To help, the band breaks out of prison journeys through Northern Europe to perform at the world's largest metal festival, Wacken. Deceived by a dishonest record label and pursued by a murderous prison guard, they try to keep the band together. Abramarama opens this search for meaning about British band Placebo at the Quad Cinema in NYC, directed by BAFTA award-winning filmmaker Oscar Sansom. Featuring never-before-seen interviews with Placebo's Brian Molko and Stefan Olsdahl, as well as exclusive interviews and footage with David Bowie, Shirley Manson, Garbage, Robbie Williams, Youngblood, Rebecca Lucy Taylor, Self-Esteem, Joe Talbot, Idols, and contemporary artist Stuart Semple. Since emerging from obscurity in the 1990s with provocative songs such as Nancy Boy and Bruise Pristine, Placebo forged a path through the macho Britpop scene, exploring politics, human rights, apathy, and corruption. Sansom is known for directing Down by the River Thames, a groundbreaking concert film capturing the legendary Liam Gallagher, Oasis, play a surreal live performance while steaming up the River Thames at sunset. Early next week, Hundreds of Beavers returns to screens on December 3rd, adding about 80 theaters throughout the weekend. The micro-budget film premiered at Fantastic Fest 2022 and eventually was self-distributed by director Mike Cheslick and producers and released last January, grossing $500 domestically and another $157 international. Debuted on streaming in April. A 35mm print will debut a tour in early 2025 as people see to dig the slapstick epic about a frostbitten battle between a dim man named Gene Kayak and hundreds of diabolical beavers who stand between him and survival. In this 19th century, supernatural winter epic, a drunken Applejack salesman must go from zero to hero and become North America's greatest fur trapper by defeating hundreds of beavers, reads the logline. It's 97% with RT critics, 85% with audiences. Written by Cheslick with Ryland Brixton and Cole Tews. Movie review Maria, directed by Pablo Larraín. Starring Angelina Jolie, Pierfrancesco Favino, Alba Rohrwacher, Halleck Bilginer, Cody Smith-McPhee, Valeria Golino, Stephen Ashfield, Alessandro Bressanello, Vincent McCain, Lydia Corniordu, Casper Philipson, Paul Spera, Aggelina Papadopoulou, Christiana Alaneftis, and Erofili Panagiotorea. An exquisitely shot and beautifully moving snapshot of an artist looking not just to sing again, but to reclaim her voice from a world that has co-opted it, invaded her personal life, and turned health concerns into gossip, or has tried to take it away from her. Maria, the trilogy capper in Pablo Larraín's portrait of depressed and internally suffering women of extraordinary note, having previously studied subjects Jackie Kennedy and Diana Spencer, chronicles the final days of world-renowned Greek opera soprano Maria Callas. While Angelina Jolie doesn't do the singing, to be fair, who could, she is wonderfully expressive during the flashback operatic performances. There is also a sense of humor to her that comes out whenever she interacts with her two trusted companions, butler Ferruccio Mezzadri, Pierfrancesco Favino, and housekeeper Bruna Lupoli, Alba Rohrwacher, both with what's best for her in mind, encouraging her to meet with a doctor and trying to wean her off of pain medication. However, the difference between Maria Callas from Jackie Kennedy and Diana Spencer is that she often makes light jokes about her condition, asserting that it's no one's business. She fires back with quips about Ferruccio's stance and back getting crooked, leading to a running joke of her ordering him to push her piano into different living room spots. It's not that Maria doesn't appreciate their concern, but that she doesn't care anymore, leading stubborn and independent final days while trying to pin down a special song to sing just for her. Meanwhile, a documentary filmmaker named Mandrax, Cody Smith-McPhee, has conversations with Maria about her career, love life, and early past, allowing for a meta-framework 3-act structure. It's an unusually conventional trope for such an experimental series of historical figure character studies, but Pablo Larraín, once again collaborating with screenwriter Stephen Knight, uses it as another opportunity to explore gorgeous black and white photography. The cinematography from Edward Lockman is consistently spellbinding, and hypnotic sequences that might be from the past or a feverish hallucination, something that Maria admits she is content experiencing. Maria, starring Angelina Jolie, is director Pablo Larraín's latest effort to build his own canon of 20th century tragedians. His previous melodramas, Jackie and Spencer, were fables about two painfully self-aware celebrities at their nadirs. Larraín peeked behind Jacqueline Kennedy's and Princess Diana's facades less to humanize them than to expose their wounds. Callas, however, was infamous for her fits, so Larraín, perversely and underwhelmingly, chooses to respect her imperious veneer. If she's the big boss-level diva he's been working up to, Larraín lets her win. Larraín allows himself the occasional visual thrill, say a throng of Parisians suddenly assembling into a chorus. Otherwise, we're so deep inside callous delusions that things just feel flat. "What is real and what is not real is my business," she pronounces, having bent the world to her will. Oddly, after swooning along with giant aria after giant aria, I left the theater fixating on one of Larraín's smallest sound design choices. It comes when Callas, resplendent even in a bathrobe, glides into the kitchen to sing at Bruna while the poor dearie cooks her an omelet. The solo goes on forever, long enough to make the point that, yes, Callas had fans clamoring outside the Metropolitan Opera, but she could also be a bit of a bore. And then, mid-song, Larraín adds a tiny clang, the sound of the spatula hitting the pan, to let us know that even in the prima donna's fiercely protected bubble, her ego doesn't always trump a plate of eggs. What a devastating thing it is to be an artist. What an even more brutal thing to be the greatest of all time. Art survives beyond the artist, but the artist herself is a prisoner of time, a victim of self-inflicted change, uncontrollable circumstance, inevitable decay. There is an argument to be made that when Maria Callas lost the voice, she lost herself. Critics and enthusiasts of opera alike subscribe to the simplicity of such a thesis, with a helping hand of schadenfreude on top. She had the audacity to have the voice in the first place, didn't she? Isn't it only fair that, long before the end of her life, the voice abandoned her? This cruel world loves to see a successful woman suffer. In various ways, Pablo Larraín's accidental trilogy of unconventional biopics, in the loosest sense of the word, as all are highly stylized, addresses this truth but never victimizes their central figures. Jackie, 2016, witnesses the horror of her husband's assassination and immediately pivots to secure his legacy despite his flaws. Spencer, 2021, bucks against a gilded institution that would sacrifice her sanity for the right photo op. Now, Maria reclaims her voice after a lifetime of allowing others to limit its power. In watching this trilogy, one can't help but wish that all three films were the unvarnished truth. That, in spite of their respective cages, Jackie persevered, Diana survived, and Maria sang only for herself. It's a tempting fiction, and Maria knows perhaps more than the two previous installments how seductive self-deception can be. Stephen Knight's script blends real memories and fabulous hallucinations in a meta three-act structure as Maria Callas approaches the end of her life. She knows it is coming, yet denies its inexorable pull. Death haunts her every step and forces her to reflect on a life lived only for opera. A life lived to the point where her very existence is opera. Maria drops truisms about opera throughout interviews with herself. Opera is not reasonable, opera must be performed and not recorded, music is suffering, etc. And each one of Maria's memories supports them. Her life, and especially the end of it, is as irrational and painful as every note she ever belted out on a stage. Played by Angelina Jolie with an unreal grace and the utmost dedication, Maria is by far the most remote of Larraín's tragic 20th century women. She is a relic of the past twice over, a celebrity gone for nearly 50 years, famous for an art form that many even in her own time considered elitist and fossilized. A cynical 21st century viewer's automatic reaction to Maria's last days may be, so what? A diva died as she lived, her head in the clouds, a goddess alone among mortals. But who cares? She achieved what so many of us never do, eternal fame. Her oft-controversial voice is immortalized on records and on Spotify. Why bother feeling an ounce of sympathy for Lycias, the long-dead diva? Empathy is the point, as it is always the point in film and in opera. Maria's art feels alien to anyone who has never seen or listened to opera, because most art these days either numbs feeling or is so explicit about what you should be feeling while you consume it that you don't actually feel anything at all. It is impossible to listen to Maria Callas, to watch Maria Callas, to watch and listen to Angelina Jolie performing Maria Callas, without imagining how it would feel in your own body to sing as she sings, to fill your lungs to bursting and support your breath with every muscle at your command, to transform the scream of a high C into an angelic exaltation that floats with perfect clarity from downstage to the nosebleeds. Opera cannot be achieved without emotion, power, or practice, and experiencing it makes you feel, whether you want it to or not. Nothing could be more foreign in 2024. Maybe nothing is more necessary. In his introduction to the film that preceded its theatrical screening, Larraín expresses a desire to bring opera back to the masses. By releasing Maria through Netflix, he is doing exactly that in his own small way. The film opens in limited theatrical release on Wednesday before its Netflix premiere on Wednesday, December 11th. There is always a danger in translating one medium of art into another. Stage plays repurposed for film rarely work for me, but this may be the most rewarding version of such an endeavor. Everything about Maria, from the camera movements and production design to the dreamlike script and Jolie's transcendent performance, imbues the purely visual medium of film with the spirit of opera. The triumph and the tragedy subsume you. He created over 60 outfits for Jolie, some meticulous recreations, such as the dress she wore to John F. Kennedy's birthday, or her iconic costume for Medea at Milan's La Scala. She always had a strong opinion about what her characters wore, Larraín observes, noting Callas's close relationships with the great designers of her day, from Christian Dior to Yves Saint Laurent. Still, Cantini Perini recalls fabricating the costumes as a long and difficult process, given his limited access to the original garments. "I am a perfectionist," says Cantini Perini. "I am a maniac about details. Even more of a challenge? The relative dearth of photographic records for the final week of Callas's life, when much of the film takes place. I had fun being her last stylist," Cantini Perini adds. He dressed Jolie in swaddling coats, wide-brimmed hats, and a near-universal palette of black. For scenes with a vocal coach, Larraín wanted his heroine in a kind of camouflage. "It's a dark process," says Larraín. "She wants to be invisible." In the gilded halls of her apartment, she wears a fuzzy, crocheted robe, a kind of chrysalis. "In those last weeks, she wasn't particularly well," Cantini Perini says. "I wanted to portray how the garments might have protected her. What you wore back then represented you. It was your business card." The 49-year-old renowned actress spoke about her acting experience in the new film at the premiere of the musical drama on October 19th. During the conversation with Irish Independent, Jolie said, "It's quite a gift to have lessons and to be at a time in your life where you get to learn a new skill." For the unversed, the globally recognized star will portray the character of Greek opera singer Maria Callas in her next biopic movie. Moreover, the Maleficent actress praised the opera sensation during her interview, stating, "I had wonderful teachers, and to be this extraordinary human being and be in her shoes, and I love her. The more I studied her and the more I learned about her, the more about her," the mother of 6 disclosed. It is important to mention that Maria will hit the theaters in November 2024. Angelina Jolie will be honored with the Desert Palm Achievement Award, actress at the upcoming Palm Springs International Film Awards for her role in Netflix's Maria. Maria presents the iconic Angelina Jolie in the role of a lifetime as she embodies Maria Callas, the world-renowned opera legend, said Nakhar Singh Chandy, festival chairman. Jolie's extraordinary portrayal captures the heart and complexity of an artist whose life was as captivating as her music. Jolie's recognitions adds to a lineup of other recipients, including Adrian Brody, Nicole Kidman, and Coleman Domingo. Past recipients of the Actress Award include Emma Stone, Cate Blanchett, Viola Davis, and Renee Zellweger, all of whom received Oscar nominations during their respective years. Directed by Pablo Larraín, Maria follows the famed opera singer Maria Callas as she navigates her final days in Paris, reflecting on her identity and legacy after a tumultuous career. The film also stars Pierfrancesco Favino, Alba Rowacher, and Cody Smith-McPhee. The film will open in select theaters on November 27th before streaming on Netflix starting December 11th. Jolie won an Oscar for her turn in James Mangold's drama Girl Interrupted, 1999. In addition, she's directed many acclaimed films, like First They Killed My Father. Beyond film, Jolie champions environmental conservation, education initiatives, and sustainable fashion through Atelier Jolie. The ceremony is set for January 3rd at the Palm Springs Convention Center during the Palm Springs International Film Festival, which runs from January 2 to 13. Angelina Jolie is a great actress who has arguably never appeared in a great film. This is not entirely her fault. It's the pictures that got small. Jolie's presence is simply too gargantuan for most movies these days, knocking them off axis all the way back to her Oscar-winning breakthrough in 1999's Girl Interrupted, during which Jolie basically capsized Winona Ryder's career by stealing the starlet's self-produced vanity project out from under her. I'd only been at this job for a few months at the time, and remember having a hard time trying to write tastefully about how dangerous, sexy, and alluring a performer could be on screen. Some would argue that I still haven't figured it out. This is the reason Jolie has spent most of her career in a rut, elevating schlocky action pictures or playing video game characters, Eternals and Wicked Queens. It's impossible to believe her as an ordinary person with a 9-to-5 job. Can you imagine seeing Angelina Jolie on the subway? Her regal, outsized femininity is totally out of step with contemporary cinema, more suited to European films from the 1960s. Lord, what Fellini or Antonioni might have done with her. The closest I suppose we're going to get is Maria, director Pablo Larraín's unconventional portrait of opera legend Maria Callas. The film follows Jackie and Spencer as the third chapter of Larraín's trilogy about famous 20th century women held captive by their celebrity. Dodging the usual biopic barrage of events in favor of closely observing these women in their gilded cages, it's a fascinating project, making sly, metatextual use of the baggage audiences can't help but bring to watching contemporary superstar leads play icons of a previous era. Such semiotically loaded films are catnip for folks like a friend of mine who identifies as an actress exual. Larraín riffs on his star's personas while playfully incorporating elements of classic movies. Jackie sent Natalie Portman's blood-spattered First Lady wandering the halls of a White House shot to look like the Overlook Hotel, while Spencer turned the royal family's Sandringham estate into the flat from Roman Polanski's Repulsion. Maria sends Sunset Boulevard to the opera. Jolie's Callas is Norma Desmond as a doomed lowercase soprano, a past-her-prime legend parading around a Parisian apartment that's more like a mausoleum. Dictatorial to her slim remaining staff and zonked on pills most of the time, she's imperious, insecure, impossible, and irresistible. It's finally a role that's the right size for its star, and Jolie is more than ready for her close-up. Maria, you've got to see her. It's 1977, and the ailing Callas hasn't performed on stage in years. Larraín and screenwriter Stephen Knight cobbled together her story via flashbacks and an interview with a documentary crew that our diva is most likely hallucinating. The young journalist, Cody Smith McPhee, is named Mandrax, same as the pills Maria's been gobbling day and night, much to the chagrin of her long-suffering butler, Pierfrancesco Favino, and the faithful cook, Alba Rohrwacher, tirelessly preparing meals that go uneaten. We get black-and-white glimpses of her romance with Greek tycoon Aristotle Onassis, Haluk Bilginer, who constantly kids about how ugly he is because he knows he has so much money it doesn't matter. It's self-deprecation as a power trip, and it's charming as hell. A running joke has Callas instructing her butler to lug a heavy piano around to different places in the apartment, not because she wants or needs it moved, merely because she can. But fame is a fickle mistress, even for a legend, and Maria's world is shrinking to a point where she's running out of ways to insist upon herself. It's a death march of diva-dom, affecting even when Knight can't resist writing one or two too many tearful goodbye scenes. When the music's over, turn out the lights. Maria opens at the Coolidge Corner Theater on Wednesday, November 27th. It starts streaming on Netflix on Wednesday, December 11th. Maria, Pablo Larraín's drama about the legendary American-born Greek soprano Maria Callas, begins on the day of her death, September 16, 1977. As thin as a wraith, clad in a white nightgown, she has collapsed on the living room floor of her very grand Paris apartment. The film then flashes back to 1 week before. Most of it takes place during that week, though it's dotted with key episodes from Callas's life. So we know exactly where this is going. But we don't just know where it's going, because the movie is set during that fateful final week. We know it because the story Maria tells is that of a neurotic death spiral. The myth of La Callas, the voice that enraptured the world, is what's now imprisoning Maria. If she can't bring La Callas back, then what point is there in living? You might call that a story as tragic as an opera, a great artist trapped by the fading of her gift. Yet you could also say that it makes the Maria Callas of Maria not so much a grand heroine striving for something real as a doomed legend living on fumes, like Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard. The central figures in Jackie and Spencer, although they were dealing with hellish circumstances, were quite different from that. Jackie was set during the week after JFK's assassination, and it was about how Jackie Kennedy rallied herself, knowing how important what would happen during that week would be to history. In doing so, she became a profile in courage. Spencer was about how Diana faced up to the existential crisis of her arranged marriage and decided to save herself by changing the nature of the modern monarchy. Both movies were about a dark kind of triumph. Maria bears many of the hallmarks of Larraín's lavish empathy and filmmaking skill. Yet the movie, in contrast, is driven by a dramatic fatalism that does it little favor. It's the first of these three films that's about a great artist, yet Maria, somehow, seems a lesser figure than the heroines of Jackie or Spencer. Or at least, it feels like there's less at stake. Jolie's performance is, in many ways, quite fine. From the moment she appears on screen, she seizes our attention, playing Maria as woman of wiles, who is imperious, mysterious, fusing the life force of a genius diva with the downbeat emotional fire of a femme fatale. Jolie, for the first time in years, reminds you that she can be a deadly serious actor of commanding subtlety and power. Yet I wish that Larraín and his screenwriter, Stephen Knight, Spencer Locke, had found a greater vulnerability in the end of her tether Maria. Maria, as shot by the great Edward Lockman, has an autumnal visual warmth that's beautiful and seductive. The flashbacks are in black and white, and they color in Maria's past, though in a way that leaves us with as many questions as answers. That's also true of her interviews with an eager young filmmaker, Cody Smith-McPhee, named, weirdly, Mandrax. Her bad relationship with her mother is captured in scenes, set during World War II, in which the young Maria is asked to sing for and sleep with German soldiers. But the key flashbacks are those built around Onassis, the fabled Greek shipping tycoon she fell in love with in 1959. Haluk Bilginer plays him as a charismatic troll who calls himself ugly, but revels so manipulatively in the power of his wealth that he makes himself somehow irresistible. Maria gets caught up in his mystique, yet won't give herself over to his control. That's why the two never marry. In fact, Onassis left Callas to marry Jackie Kennedy, something the film deals with tangentially by introducing JFK as a character. There's a feeling of fate hanging over Maria. It's Larraín's way of raising the stakes, yet in a strange way it ends up lowering them as well. Such is the nature of Maria Callas's determination to control her destiny that even the hopes of the audience, that she'll somehow find a way to transcend her funk, aren't allowed to interfere with her self-fulfilling downward spiral. We get a lot of glimpses, shot on different film stocks, of Callas on stage, back in her 1950s and 60s heyday. But none of them are extended enough to let us sink into the sensation of her artistry bringing down the house. At one point, Maria observes that singing opera the way she does is so draining, it takes the life out of you. In its way, that's an awesome thought, but by the end of Maria, you almost feel like it's taken the life out of the movie. Angelina Jolie glides through the final days of Maria Callas's short life in Pablo Larraín's Maria, a dramatic, evocative elegy to the famed soprano. It's an affair that's at turns melancholy, biting, and grandly theatrical, an aria for a once-in-a-generation star. Reality is of little consequence on the stage and in Maria. It's all about the raw feeling, which serves the movie well, more dream than history lesson about La Callas. Early on, she pops some mandrax and tells her devoted butler Ferruccio, a simply wonderful Pierfrancesco Favino, that a television crew is on the way. Are they real? He wonders. As of this morning, what is real and what is not real is my business, she says calmly and definitively, making a feast out of Stephen Knight's sharp script. It's one of many great lines and moments for Jolie, whose intensity and resolve belie her fragile appearance. And it's a signal to the audience as well. Don't fret about dull facts or that Jolie doesn't really resemble Callas all that much. This is a biopic as opera, an emotional journey fitting of the great diva, full of flair, beauty, betrayal, revelations, and sorrow. In Maria, we are the companion to a protagonist with an ever-loosening grip on reality, walking with her through Paris and her life for 1 week in September 1977. In one of the film's few regrettable scenes, she's put face to face with John F. Kennedy, no fault of Casper Philipson, whose wife has caught the greedy eye of Onassis. As a testament to the power of Jolie and the script, you almost forgive yet another JFK impersonation for giving her one of the great brush-offs to utter, romantic and withering all at once. Is it all a little much? Of course, but that's kind of the point of Maria. Pablo Larraín seems to be fixated on the 20th century's most glamorous and wealthy women. The Chilean director's fact-based dramas include Jackie, 2016, which starred Natalie Portman as Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and Spencer, 2021, which starred Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana. Now he's completed his trilogy with Maria, in which Angelina Jolie plays one of history's most celebrated opera sopranos, Maria Callas. The fact that both Callas and Kennedy had long relationships with Aristotle Onassis is another link between these films, although sadly, Portman doesn't make a surprise cameo appearance as Jackie O. The difference between them is that while Jackie and Spencer had something distinctive to say about their heroines, Maria wafts around without quite settling on what it wants to say. Written by Stephen Knight, who also scripted Spencer, the film opens in 1977 Paris, with Callas's dead body being removed from her chandeliered apartment, not the most original of places to start a biopic. The narrative then rewinds by a week to take us through her final days. By this point, she has long since given up performing, and she spends her time under the watchful eye of her butler, Pierfrancesco Favino, and housekeeper, Alba Rohrwacher. both of whom are devoted to her, despite her insistence that they move her grand piano from room to room on a daily basis. Her butler, by far the film's most touching character, is determined that Callis should see a doctor about all the pills she is taking, but she has other plans. She goes to an opera house to see if her ailing voice might be coaxed back to its glorious best. Jolie's own voice is mixed with recordings of Callis's, and she has an in-depth interview scheduled with a television crew. This television crew, asks her butler, is it real? The answer is no. The crew members are hallucinations, and Callis knows it, but she has no qualms about chatting to her visions, and so she strolls around Paris, talking to a non-existent interviewer, Cody Smith McPhee, who she names after a pill she has just taken, Mandrax. This imagined interview is a contrived excuse for Larraín to reconstruct episodes from Callis's past, some of them shot in different aspect ratios and in black and white. We see her singing for Nazi officers as a teenager in Greece during World War II. We see her as a show-stealing last-minute replacement for another singer in Venice in 1949, a scene that echoes Leonard Bernstein's big break in Bradley Cooper's Maestro, although, unlike Cooper, Larraín has made the sensible choice not to give his star a false nose. It seems insulting that Callis's boyfriend gets more attention than her towering achievements and her seismic conflicts, but the film's main preoccupation is her romance with Onassis, Haluk Bilginer, which begins at a cocktail party in 1957 where the shipping magnate boasts a few feet away from her husband that they are destined to be together. Back in 1977, Callis tells her staff that Onassis's ghost still visits her every night, so maybe she was obsessed with him until the end. Maria Callas was celebrated and talented in her own right, so it seems insulting that her boyfriend gets more attention than her towering achievements and her seismic conflicts. The Maria and Ari scenes are less opera than soap opera. That's not to say that they aren't engaging. Knight has written countless lines of spikily, witty, quotable dialogue, and it's never a chore to watch a beautiful actor wearing beautiful outfits in beautiful Paris locations. But there is no urgency to Maria. We all know from the opening scene that Callis's week is not going to end with a miraculous comeback, so her physical and mental wanderings don't have any tension or momentum. The film is also too adoring and reverential to let us sympathize with its supposedly fragile heroine. Unusually for someone who is drug-addled and terminally ill, Jolie's Callis never looks anything less than magnificent, and she is always supremely dignified, poised, and confident, outquipping everyone who crosses her path. "What did you take?" asks her butler, after his boss has been to her well-stocked medicine cabinet. "I took liberties all my life," she replies, "and the world took liberties with me." As that unlikely exchange might suggest, this Callis is an icon rather than a human being. Larraín and his team refuse to take her down from her pedestal, so they don't imbue her with any of the vulnerability or the playful vivacity that the real Callis has when she winks and laughs at the camera in snippets of footage over the closing credits. Throughout the film, various people draw a distinction between Maria, the woman, and Lacailles, the superhuman diva. Its title notwithstanding, Maria is definitely about Lacailles. One stab at O mio babino caro puts the writing on the wall. The magic is gone from the voice of Maria Callas, soprano extraordinaire. In her last days, she has lost control over the one thing that should have put her in control over the rest of her life, if it weren't for the people in her life denying her that chance. From enchanting an SS officer with La Bohème for a couple of drachmae early in her life in Greece, to enrapturing the historic La Scala Opera House with a thunderous, mad scene from Donizetti's Anna Bolena in her final days, La Divina, La Diva, La Callas, or simply Maria reflects on her life and career while bossing around her crooked butler Ferruccio, Pierfrancesco Favino, and mousy housekeeper Bruna, Alba Rohrwacher. She mostly leads a withdrawn existence in her sumptuous Paris apartment, which more and more starts to feel like a tomb. A journey past the highlights, on stage, and the low points, the rest of her life, framed by a week-long interview session with a young journalist, Cody Smith McPhee, paints the portrait of a woman who, despite her success, never truly was capable of stepping out of the shadow of being the voice. A tempestuous but long-lasting relationship with Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis, Haluk Bilginer, put a large mark on her life, a shadow that hung over her even after his death in 1975. Scandals, allegations of faking illness to get out of performances, and general diva behavior gave Callas the reputation of being a prima donna, and at the time of her death, in September 1977, she was mostly regarded as a has-been, adulation to her face changing to whispers behind her back. It is her death that marks the start of Maria, Pablo Larraín's portrait of the opera singer, the final third in his Caged Birds trilogy after Jackie, about Jackie Kennedy, whose own ties to Onassis get her several mentions here. Sadly, no cameo by Natalie Portman, and the Lady D biopic, Spencer. Although Callas on the surface seems the least like a bird trapped in a golden cage, the recurring references to a songbird already hint at the protected life of Callas, largely on account of Onassis controlling it. When you dig a little deeper, a life full of people never refusing you anything, never telling you no, is a life of entrapment too. For all her diva behavior and the ways she denigrates her personal staff, it is clear that the human connection they provide is what she most reveres. A late scene in which the threesome of Callas, Ferruccio, and Bruna play cards turns heartbreaking when the Callas facade suddenly breaks and shows Maria's warmth and love for the two people most loyal to her. After the opening death, the aftermath of which bookends the film, Maria skips back a week to the start of the interview series that will lead us past the defining moments, a simple device that does not really work, and also seems to leave Smith-McPhee nonplussed about what to do with the part. It shows a tormented soul who drew up a wall of seeming arrogance to shield herself from the pain left behind by the rocky marriage of her parents and the embitterment of her mother. In a sense, her own relationship with Onassis is a mirror image of that of her parents, a tragedy in and of itself. The film also shows a lonely and unhappy woman, a result of what reveals itself as another layer of bars on her cage. The extraordinary gift of her voice, utterly defining her as a person to the point where she was the voice and nothing else. As Callas herself once said, to music critic and personal friend John Ardoin, "It's a very terrible thing to be Maria Callas, because it's a question of trying to understand something you can never really understand." Or perhaps it is even better verbalized by her movie version, who says to John F. Kennedy, "We have an incredible place in this world, but we can't get away from it." Jolie's performance also threatens to outshine the rest of the film, in part because she is on screen in virtually every shot, but also because through the plethora of flashbacks, the film has a scattershot nature, compounded by Larraín bringing a wide variety of cinematographic choices to the table. He goes through black and white sequences as easily as through grainy, Kodak-like footage and more modern-looking footage. As per usual with Larraín's films, visually, Maria doesn't disappoint, but the cascade of visual styles conjures up memories of that biopic of another icon, Andrew Dominik's Blonde. While the effect is not as dizzying and certainly has more thought behind it than in Dominik's film, Larraín's frequent style switching does make the film restless and opens it up for critiques, unfairly, but to be expected from some corners, of looking like a perfume ad, especially with the frequent use of opera fragments. These specific fragments, in which we often switch between Jolie in the present and Jolie in recreated stage performances from her glory days, create a link between the tragic characters Callas played in the operas she performed and the tragedy of her own life, which in this cinematic universe metaphorically ends in the same way most of her opera heroines did. Despite the disorienting effect of some of Larraín's choices, Maria is a more accessible film than Jackie or Spencer, largely because it follows the pattern and tropes of a standard biopic far more than those other two films did. Also, whereas both those films were driven by an atmosphere of dread and paranoia, Maria mainly runs on an aura of sadness and loneliness, which are easier to digest emotions for general audiences and far less suffocating. With Netflix having just acquired the US rights to the film, the question arises whether streaming is the best outlet, although there surely will be an Oscar-qualifying limited theater run, given that the many opera scenes really need a theater setting to truly come into their own. But the film should run less risk of being prematurely ended by casual viewers than the earlier films. Despite Callas being incredibly gifted and unique, the emotions at play here are relatable and easy to empathize with, not in the least because of Jolie's strong performance. If Larraín could have reined in his more excessive tendencies, this might have been a masterpiece. But as it stands, Maria is a powerful portrait of a woman who at the end of her life has finally taken control, but lost it over the one thing that defined her. Angelina Jolie glides through the final days of Maria Callas' short life in Pablo Larraín's Maria, a dramatic, evocative elegy to the famed soprano. It's an affair that's at turns melancholy, biting, and grandly theatrical, an aria for a once-in-a-generation star. Reality is of little consequence on the stage and in Maria. It's all about the raw feeling, which serves the movie well, more dream than history lesson about La Callas. Early on, she pops some mandrax and tells her devoted butler Ferruccio, a simply wonderful Pierfrancesco Favino, that a television crew is on the way. Are they real? He wonders. As of this morning, what is real and what is not real is my business, she says calmly and definitively, making a feast out of Stephen Knight's sharp script. It's one of many great lines and moments for Jolie, whose intensity and resolve belie her fragile appearance. And it's a signal to the audience as well. Don't fret about dull facts or that Jolie doesn't really resemble Callas all that much. This is a biopic as opera, an emotional journey fitting of the great diva, full of flair, beauty, betrayal, revelations, and sorrow. In Maria, we are the companion to a protagonist with an ever-loosening grip on reality, walking with her through Paris and her life for 1 week in September 1977. The images from cinematographer Ed Lochman, playfully shifting in form and style, take us on a scattershot journey through her triumphs on stage, her scandalous romance with Aristotle Onassis, Haluk Bilginer, and her traumatic youth. In the present, at age 53, she sleeps till midday, drinks the minimal calories she ingests, goes to restaurants where the waiters know her name looking for adulation, and has visions of performances staged just for her all around the city. Callas is always immaculately dressed and assured, whether reflecting to the imagined news crew led by Cody Smith-McPhee or attempting to find her voice again. Her instrument had famously diminished, leaving her wondering what's left to live for. The only consistent praise she gets is from her obedient housemaid Bruna, Alba Rohrwacher. It's no secret that the destination is death, and you suspect that she knows quite well that everything will be a big dimmer when her spotlight is turned off. Larraín has made a lasting mark on cinema with his unofficial trilogy about these famous women with tragic narratives. With Jackie, Spencer, and now Maria, his films are also an unintentional antidote to Ryan Murphy's stranglehold of the grand dames of recent history, which are all style and scandal and little substance. And yet Larraín's films are not for everyone. If Jackie and Spencer did not speak to you, did not show those women as you hoped they would, Maria will not turn you into a believer. 3 movies in, it seems that audiences are either very on board with his vision or not. There is little room for an in-between. And yet, it's hard to deny that his films are incredible showcases for actors. Jolie as a movie star is somehow both omnipresent and elusive, and lately, she chooses to step in front of the camera all too infrequently. Sometimes you wish she could just follow in Nicole Kidman's footsteps, for whom quantity does not seem to ever jeopardize quality, and she seems to be having fun doing it all the time. Perhaps it's because performances like Jolie's in Maria look so all-consuming. In the film, Maria scolds a fan for daring to question that she faked sickness to miss a performance. He doesn't understand the total commitment of body and soul required to make it look effortless, which is probably true. Jolie is not so dramatic, at least publicly, about what it takes to create art. But here the lines blur. Character and actor blend so seamlessly, so ferociously, that you leave not just with heightened empathy for La Callas, but Jolie as well. Of course, that all sounds terribly tedious without things getting messy. The traumas that cut her the deepest, instances of verbal abuse from a mother seemingly afflicted with narcissistic personality disorder, are for some reason only mentioned in passing multiple times. Through flashbacks, we get to bear witness to the really salacious stuff instead. Young Maria, Aggelina Papadopoulou, has to entertain Nazi soldiers. The older, but maybe not wiser diva, while married to Giovanni Battista Meneghini, Alessandro Bressanello, surrenders to the courtship of the super-rich Aristotle Onassis, Haluk Bilginer. Yes, that Aristotle Onassis. She speaks of the stranglehold others have had on her, such as Onassis forbidding her to sing and wanting her to be a trophy on his shelf. She says she's finally free and does whatever she feels like. Yet she readily submits herself to meds smuggled by her sister, Yakinthi, Valeria Galino. Ed Lochman's camera pans slowly to reveal impeccable decor. Unfortunately, in this world, characters also seem like furniture. They exist, or maybe not, depending on whether they serve the mise-en-scène. In Callous Days, an orchestra is performing in the pouring rain before an audience of geishas in kimonos holding paper umbrellas. Cut to reality. It's not raining at all. Does this actually signify anything, or is it just visually pleasing? The film's stately artfulness hardly conceals the tawdry nature of the screenplay by Stephen Knight, who also wrote Spencer. Jolie is best when performing Callas the performer. She apparently spent 7 months training to sing opera, but this is not so much a comment on her vocals. The two Callas performances that bookend the film showcase the finest and most nuanced acting from her in the film. In other scenes, she is consistently one note. She is supposed to play a diva, but that larger-than-life aura doesn't come across. In most scenes, the characters, even the imaginary ones, barely exhibit any emotion when conversing. These actors are ordinarily better than this, which makes one wonder why they've been directed to deliver their lines in such stilted fashion. Callas seems to be drawn to much older men, but the appeal is never articulated or analyzed. Nothing in the performances by Bilginer or even Bressanello help elaborate exactly what she sees in them. Her daddy issues are ripe for the picking, but again, the movie is more interested in Callas wallowing in the je ne sais quoi than her taking control of her life or exhibiting accountability for her own actions and decisions. While I am no expert on whether Jolie's own singing is any good, music does play an important role here. It's supposed to be an outlet for all the repressed emotions simmering beneath other scenes. But ultimately, it feels like the filmmakers are letting these instantly recognizable classic compositions and recordings do the heavy lifting in terms of pulling on the viewer's heartstrings. It's an unbearable burden to keep up appearances in the public eye. I get it. But does this point need to be made again and again? It would have been marginally interesting if the film had explored what went on in her life while she was producing her best work. Instead, here we essentially have 2 hours of a once-was feeling sorry for herself. We first meet Pablo Larraín's Maria Callas on her literal deathbed. It is an ornate one, though comparatively small in her sprawling, sumptuous Parisian apartment. Callas herself, Angelina Jolie, is shrunken and struggling beneath the covers. It is 1977, and the legendary soprano singer, known as La Divina, the Divine One, has been living in isolation for 4 years, fueled by a bespoke cocktail of prescription pills, venturing out infrequently. Requesting an appointment with a hairdresser that doesn't speak and reserving a table somewhere, the waiters know who I am, Maria curates her interactions meticulously. I come to restaurants to be adored, she admits. Throughout the film, she offers many such asides to Mandrax, Cody Smith McPhee, a TV journalist named in the film for one of the brands of sedative she favors, as well as a figment of her imagination. Sensing that she is approaching the end of her life, Maria is attempting to autobiographize it. We flash back to the black and white days of her first marriage, watching her affections become overwhelmed by the lavish impulses of roguish shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis, Haluk Bilginer, whose charm offensive dissipates as he spurns Maria for Jackie Kennedy, notably Larraín's first biopic muse, in his unofficial trilogy of misunderstood female icons of the 20th century, along with Princess Diana. No one cares if she can sing. Onassis tells Maria towards the end of their relationship as they look on at Marilyn Monroe's infamous birthday serenade. Just like no one cares about your body. The Cad, another recent film about a fading female star facing the conflict between a deteriorated present and a younger, more radiant self, is Coralie Fargeat's The Substance. Yet unlike Fargeat's more fictionally rooted film, Larraín's biopic presents the tension between Maria's then and now with a great deal of empathy and attention to detail, and feels all the richer for it. With Onassis, she says, her youth felt as if it was within reach. I could be a girl again. But even in the wake of the tycoon's death, Maria is not alone. Made up of Bruna, Alba Rohrwacher, a soft-spoken housekeeper who can cook anything, and Ferruccio, Pierfrancesco Favino, the devoted butler who diligently moves around his capricious madam's grand piano, the dowager's house staff act as her advisors and confidantes, caring for her beloved miniature poodles while keeping a wary eye on her spiraling drug consumption. For the most part, Maria is unable to accept their kindness at this point in her life. "Do you know why I hate you?" she asks Ferruccio, her elegant European tone imbued with quiet venom. "I fall into a river, and you always fish me out." In the present day, Maria's voice isn't what it used to be. It may never be the same again, but the singer works doggedly to return her vocals to the height of their powers, rehearsing with a dedicated pianist, reminiscing over triumphant but painful memories of her ability before its diminishment. In these flashback scenes, Jolie's singing has been digitally combined with Maria Callas's actual vocals. Unfortunately, the overall effect is closer to a lip-sync performance than a voracious musical outpouring. It feels almost cruel that Jolie's own vocals, the product of a 6-month training schedule as well as lessons in Italian, are emphasized in Maria's laborious present-day sequences. While its highlights include exquisite frames composed by cinematographer and longtime Larraín collaborator Edward Lachman, as well as opulent costume pieces from designer Massimo Cantini Perini, the film has a penchant for the elaborate and unsubtle. For instance, Maria's encounter with a sleazy, caricaturish music journalist who sneaks into her rehearsal and terrorizes her about her artistic shortcomings. This ostensibly represents the vitriolic press that Callas became subject to towards the end of her life, but it comes across a bit too pat to be genuinely affecting. Though Larraín has said he didn't want to make a dark movie about a tragic situation, the gloom inherent to Maria feels in many ways unavoidable. If Larraín meant for the film to be a celebration of the singer, it arguably becomes too mired in its protagonist's tragedies to allow for such a reading. But Callas's life was an extraordinary one, from the time she spent living in poverty in Nazi-occupied Athens to her first Electric La Scala performance and the ritzy yacht parties of her early courtship with Onassis, a compelling, richly rendered story well worth spending a couple of hours on. Early reactions to Angelina Jolie's latest movie are signaling the superstar's triumphant return to the big screen. Maria, director Pablo Larraín's new biopic about opera singer Maria Callas, premiered at the Venice International Film Festival on Thursday, August 29th. Deadline film critic Stephanie Bunbury described Jolie, 49, as an almost magical match for the real diva in a review of the film. "The actor's commitment to this creation is obvious at every turn," she wrote. Knowing that Callas was only happy when on stage, she learned to sing for the role. The voice we hear is a blend of Callas and Jolie's own. Even more importantly, we can see her chest rise and veins swell as she is consumed, body and soul, by the physical and emotional effort of singing. The Independent's Clarice Laffrey praised Jolie's performance in a review. "It's a career-defining bit of synchronicity, bolstered by one of Jolie's very best performances. Her work has always been about that immaculate sense of control over posture and tone." Variety's Owen Gleiberman wrote that Jolie seizes our attention, playing Maria as woman of wiles who is imperious, mysterious, fusing the life force of a genius diva with the downbeat emotional fire of a femme fatale in the movie, while expressing some issues with the film as a whole. Jolie, for the first time in years, reminds you that she can be a deadly serious actor of commanding subtlety and power, Gleiberman added. Writing for the film and television website Little White Lies, Hannah Strong asserted that Jolie has found the role of a lifetime in a similar manner to Natalie Portman's portrayal of Jackie Kennedy in Larraín's 2016 film Jackie. "It's quite something to watch a woman as instantly recognizable as Jolie be so bewitching while playing someone else incredibly famous, always a challenge in biopics where footage of the subject exists, and without the layers of prosthetics that actors normally rely on to transform," she wrote. Yet Jolie achieves such with a refined purr of a European accent and something equally file in her gait. Fionnuala Halligan wrote for Screen Daily that the movie exceeds with a sense of elusiveness and the unexpected even within its familiar structure, adding, Larraín leans into Jolie's aimlessness as she wanders around Paris by creating scenes and memories that take place only in her mind, and adding orchestras which spring to life across the city to usher in Madame Butterfly, for example, in the rain. Occasions and exquisite costumes for Callis' famed stage roles, some of which the singer is seen burning as she separates herself from the past. I'm in the mood for adulation. Callis tells a Paris waiter when he suggests she might be more comfortable inside than at an outdoor cafe table. I come to restaurants to be adored, Larraín, and screenwriter Stephen Knight, who previously penned Spencer, comply to a degree. Their film is an act of mournful worship for a diva who seems almost too arch, too cloaked in affectation, to read as a vulnerable human being, even as her body is shutting down, and she's racked with insecurities about her voice while planning to sing. Again, more than 4 years after she last performed. Often it feels like the filmmakers are scrutinizing Callis with the disorienting effect of a magnifying glass. The balance doesn't seem quite right when you feel more for the loyal household staff who love and protect her than you do for the woman lying dead on the carpet by the grand piano. That image opens the movie, preceded only by a slow pan around Kiss' stately apartment. Knight employs the pedestrian framing device of an interview with a TV arts reporter and cameraman coming to Maria's home. The journalist's name, Mandrax Cody Smith MC, in a thankless role, is a tip-off that he's a product of Maria's mind, given that it's also the name of the medication on which she's most dependent. More commonly sold as Q-ludes in the U.S., in what seems a ritual maintained for some time, Maria's hypervigilant butler Fuccio Pierfrancesco Favino removes the pills from her dressing table and later from the handbags and coat pockets where she has stashed handfuls of them around the room. She has also stopped eating for days at a time, feeding meals prepared by her housekeeper, Bruna Albaraka, to her poodles. She becomes peevish about the dire warnings of her doctor, Vincent McCain, that her heart and liver are completely shot, and that the stress of attempting to perform, plus the meds she would need to get through it, risk killing her. The dominant thread becomes not that grim final week, punctuated by a board of rehearsals with a gently coaxing accompanist, Stephen Ashfield, but the singer's mental fours into her past, from her unhappy childhood with an exploitative mother, Lydia Cardew, through her love affair with Aristotle. Onassis Huck Byliner, whose aggressive charms instantly shoved her husband to the sidelines since the Greek shipping magnate eventually left her for Jackie Kennedy. There's a satisfying full-circle completion with the subject of Larraín's first film in the trilogy, but don't expect a cameo from Jackie star Natalie Portman. Maria's memories are additionally crowded with her triumphs in the world's most prestigious opera. Houses Covent Garden the Met Los Gala, flooding the movie with glorious music. The naked emotionality and piercing tragedy of the immortal operatic heroines is a poignant fit for Callis' end-of-life story and a useful counterpoint to her studied poise and aloofness in this interpretation. The Power of Work by Verri. Pini Bellini, Danetti Catalani, and Cabini goes a long way toward delivering the pathos that often seems muted by Larraín's approach. Passages from some of the most celebrated classical operas of effectively supplant the role of a score. The soul-stirring choice of musical bookend for the film starts with Desdemona's supplicant prayer, a Maria from Otel, and closes with Visi Dai from O Tusa, in which a woman who lived for art and love feels abandoned by God opera. Enthusiasts will find much here to savor when the movie drops on Netflix at a date to be determined. Commendably, Jolie undertook more than 6 months of rigorous vocal training for the part, also working on breathing and posture alongside specifics like accent. The singing we hear in Maria is a synthesized mix of star and subject aras from her prime R, predominantly Callis recordings, but her voice in the 1977 scenes, older and rustere after years of vocal strain and a long absence from the stage, blends in a significant amount of Jolie. Neither lip-syncing nor karaoke. It's a more intricate hybrid. A number of striking moments use music to show memory and fantasy bleeding into Callis' diminishing hold on reality. For instance, Maria, strolling through the city with the Eiffel Tower in the background in her mind, marshalling a crowd of everyday Parisian singing than Enville chorus from Il Trovatore, or a full orchestra on the white steps of one of the French capital's grand historic buildings playing in the rain, while a throng of costumed jishes performed the tumming chorus from Madama Butterfly, that ineffably moving passage of music representing butterflies, calm vigil as she waits for Pinkerton's return, adds emotional heft to the work. Tragedy looming in Maria's life conflict surfaces when a music reporter for Luff, Figaro pulls a dirty trick and then confronts Maria outside the rehearsal auditorium with the view that her voice is irreparably ragged. But Nightscript doesn't capitalize on this as a moment of self-reckoning, instead limiting the scene to a distressing invasion of privacy. The movie aims to depict a celebrated woman whose life has been as much about sacrifice as reward-seeking to take control, to look back and see the truth as death approaches. But its moments of illumination are hazy. There's little that comes close to the compassion and insight Larraín brought to his portraits of Jackie Kennedy and Princess Diana, even though it's very much of a piece with those movies. The tenderness of a scene in which Maria's sister Valeria Gallino urges her to put her troubled childhood behind her close the door. Little sister inadvertently points up how few opportunities we are given to get on comparably intimate terms with the protagonist. In fact, the most heartbreaking moment for me came at the end when the film returns to the day. First, sounds like some strangled note from an aria is revealed to have come from one of her poodles, the dog's cry of anguish becoming a loud expression of the hushed sorrow shown by Fuccio and Bruna Favino and Walker are both wonderful as they for each other's hand. For comfort, still Maria is a far more daring and unconventional take on the final chapter of the legendary soprano's life than Franco Zeff's boilerplate 2002 biopic Callis Forever starring Fanny Ardant, and Larraín's film becomes retroactively more affecting when the lovely archival images of Callis over the end credits, full of vitality at the peak of her career, widen the perspective on her sad, accelerated decline. Maria, a dramatic, evocative elegy to the famed soprano. It's an affair that's at turns melancholy, biting, and grandly theatrical in aria for a once-in-a-generation star. Reality is of little consequence on the stage, and in Maria, it's all about the raw feeling, which serves the movie well. More dream than history lesson about Loch Hollis. Early on, she pops some mandrax and tells her devoted butler Fuccio a simply wonderful Pierfrancesco. Favino, that television crew, is on the way. Are they real? He wonders as of this morning. What is real and what is not real is my business, she says calmly and definitively, making a feast out of Stephen Knight's sharp script. It's one of many great lines and moments for Jolie, whose intensity and resolve bell her fragile appearance, and it's a signal to the audience as well. Don't fret about dull facts or that Jolie doesn't really resemble Callis all that much. This is a biopic as opera, an emotional journey, fitting of the great diva, full of flair, beauty, betrayal, revelations, and sorrow. In Maria, we are the companion to a protagonist with an ever-loosening grip on reality, walking with her through Paris and her life for 1 week in September 1977. The images from cinematographer Ed Lockman, playfully shifting in form and style, take us on a scattershot journey through her triumphs on stage, her scandalous romance with Aristotle Onassis Huckbeeler, and her traumatic youth in the he. Present at age 53, she sleeps till midday, drinks the minimal calories she ingests, goes to restaurants where the waiters know her name, looking for adulation, and has visions of performances staged just for her all around the city. This image, released by Netflix, shows Casper Philipson as JFK Left and Huckbeeler as Aristotle Onassis in a scene from Maria Pablo line. Netflix via AP Callis is always immaculately dressed and assured, whether reflecting to the imagined news crew led by Cody Smith MC or attempting to find her voice again. Her instrument had famously diminished, leaving her wondering what's left to live for the ghee. Only consistent praise she gets is from her obedient housemaid Bruna Alba Rocca. It's no secret that the destination is death, and you suspect that she knows quite well that everything will be a big dimmer when her spotlight is turned off. Larraín has made a lasting mark on cinema with his unofficial trilogy about these famous women with tragic narratives with Jackie Spencer. And now, Maria, his films are also an unintentional antidote to Ryan Murphy's stranglehold of the grand dames of God recent history, which are all style and scandal and little substance. And yet Lorraine's films are not for everyone. If Jackie and Spen Search did not speak to you, did not show those women as you hoped they would, Maria will not turn you into a believer. 3 movies in, it seems that audiences are either very on board with his vision or not. There's little room for an in-between this image. Released by Netflix shows from left Alba Walker as Bruna Lupoli, Pierfrancesco, Favino as Fucho Madri, and Angelina Jolie as Maria Callas in a scene from Maria. Pablo line Netflix via AP, and yet it's hard to deny that his films are incredible showcases for actors. Jolie as a movie star is somehow both omnipresent and elusive, and lately, she chooses to step in front of the camera all too infrequently. Sometimes you wish she could just follow in Nicole Kidman's footsteps, for whom quantity does not seem to ever jeopardize quality, and she seems to be having fun doing it all the time. Perhaps it's because performances like Jolie in Maria looks so all-consuming in the film. Maria scolds a fan for daring to question she faked sickness to miss a performance. He doesn't understand the total commitment of body and soul required to make it look effortless. Which is probably true. Jolie is not so dramatic, at least, publicly about what it takes to create art. But here the lines blur character. An actor blends so seamlessly, so ferociously, that you leave not just with heightened empathy for lies, but Jolie as well. In one of the film's few regrettable scenes, she's put face to face with John F. Kennedy, no fault of Casper Philipson, whose wife has caught the greedy eye of Onassis, as a testament to the power of almost forgive yet another JFK impersonation for giving her one of the great brush-offs to utter romantic and withering all at once. Is it all a little much, of course, but that's kind of the point of Maria, a Netflix release in select theaters now and streaming. December 11th is rated R by the Motion Picture Association for a sexual reference. Some language running time 122 minutes. 3 stars out of 4. Extra information following Jackie and Spencer. Maria is Pablo Larraín's latest snapshot portrait of the publicly glamorous but privately tragic, and after Oscar nominations for Natalie Portman as Jacqueline Kennedy and Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana, one for Angelina Jolie as Maria Callas, almost seems like a foregone conclusion. Netflix snatched up the new film before its premiere at the Venice Film Festival, which just goes to show how much of a sure bet the thing is. This brand of highbrow, navel-gazing, elevated tabloid fodder is now a well-trodden path for the Chilean filmmaker who first garnered attention with Tony Monero. He has it down to a formula, an assembly line. Does he have interesting things to say each time, or is he just repeating himself? At this point, the film focuses on the final week of the legend A.R. Soprano's life. She hasn't eaten in days. She's popping pills. She erratically hides them in her coat pockets to shield them from the eyes of her domestic staff. She's holding court with Mandrax Cody Smith MC, an imaginary interviewer named after the very pills she's popping. She skips her doctor's appointments. She fusses over the placement of a grand piano in her apartment, ordering her butler Fucho Pierfrancesco Favino to roll it from room to room and back. She wanders around Paris in a daze she hasn't performed in over 4 years. But she is secretly rehearsing, of course. That all sounds terribly tedious without things getting messy. The traumas that cut her the deepest instances of verbal abuse from a mother seemingly afflicted with narcissistic personality disorder are for some reason only mentioned in passing multiple times through flashbacks. We get to bear witness to the really salacious stuff instead. Young Maria Aggelina Papadopoulou has to entertain Nazi soldiers, the older, but maybe not wiser diva, while married to Giovanni Battista Manini. Alessandro Brello surrenders to the courtship of the super-rich Aristotle Onassis. Yes, that Aristotle Onassis. She speaks of the stranglehold others have had on her, such as Onassis forbidding her to sing and wanting her to be a trophy on his shelf. She says she's finally free and does whatever she feels like. Yet she readily submits herself to meds smuggled by her sister Yini Valeria Galino Ed. Lachman's camera pans slowly to reveal impeccable decor. Unfortunately, in this world, characters also seem like furniture. They exist, or maybe not, performing in the pouring rain before an audience of Gauss in Konas holding paper umbrellas. Cut to reality. It's not raining at all. Does this actually signify anything, or is it just visually pleasing? The film's stately artfulness hardly conceals the tawdry nature of the screenplay by Stephen Knight, who also wrote Spencer Jolie, is best when performing Callus, the performer. She apparently spent 7 months training to sing opera, but this is not so much a comment on her vocals. The 2 Callus performances that bookend the film showcase the finest and most nuanced acting from her in the film. In other scenes, she is consistently one. Note, she is supposed to play a diva, but that larger-than-life aura doesn't come across in most scenes. The characters, even the imaginary ones, barely exhibit any emotion when conversing. These actors are ordinarily better than this, which makes one wonder why they've been directed to deliver their lines in such stilted fashion. Callus seems to be drawn to much older men, but the appeal is never articulated or analyzed. Nothing in the performances by Bilger or even Brello help elaborate exactly what she sees in them. Her daddy issues are ripe for the picking. But again, the movie is more interested in Callus wallowing in the je ne sais quoi than her taking control of her life or exhibiting accountability for her own actions and decisions. While I am no expert on whether Jolie's own singing is any good, music does play an important role here. It's supposed to be an outlet for all the repressed emotions simmering beneath other scenes. But ultimately, it feels like the filmmakers are letting these instantly recognizable classic compositions and recordings do the heavy lifting in terms of pulling on the viewer's heartstrings. It's an unbearable burden to keep up appearances. In the public eye, I get it, but does this point need to be made again and again? It would have been marginally interesting if the film had explored what went on in her life while she best work. Instead here, we essentially have 2 hours of a once was feeling sorry for herself. Pablo Larraín seems to be fixated on the 20th century's most glamorous and wealthy women, the Chilean. Director's fact-based dramas include Jackie, 2016, which starred Natalie Portman as Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and Spencer, 2021, which starred Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana. Now he's completed his trilogy with Maria, in which Angelina Jolie plays one of history's most celebrated opera soprano, Maria Callas. The fact that both Callas and Kennedy had long relationships with Aristotle Onassis is another link between these films. Although sadly, Portman doesn't make a surprise cameo appearance as Jackie O. The difference between them is that while Jackie and Spencer had something distinctive to say about their heroines, Maria wafts around without quite settling on what it wants to say. Written by Stephen Knight, who also scripted Spencer. The film opens in 1977 Paris, with Kisa's dead body being removed from her chandelier department, not the most original of places to start a biopic. The narrative then rewinds by a week to take us through her final days. By this point, she has long since given up performing, and she spends her time under the watchful eye of her butler Pierfrancesco Favino and housekeeper Alba Rocca, both of whom are devoted to her. Despite her insistence that they move her grand piano from room to room on a daily basis, her butler, by far the film's most touching character, is determined that Callas should see a doctor about all the pills she's taking. But she has other plans. She goes to an opera house to see if her ailing voice might be coaxed back to its glorious best. Jolie's own voice is mixed with recordings of Cusis, and she has an in-depth interview scheduled with a television crew. This television crew asks her, "Butler, is it real?" The answer is no. The crew members are hallucinations, and Callas knows it, but she has no qualms about chatting to her visions, and so she strolls around Paris talking to a non-existent interviewer, Cody Smith MC, who she names after a pill she has just taken, Mandrax. This imagined interview is a contrived excuse for Lorraine to reconstruct episodes from Sis's past, some of them shot in different aspect ratios, and in black and white, we see her singing for Nazi officers as a teenager in Greece. During World War II, we see her as a show-stealing last-minute replacement for another singer in Venice in 1949, a scene that echoes Leonard Bernstein's big break in Bradley Cooper's Moreau. Although unlike Cooper, Lorraine has made the sensible choice not to give his star a false nose. It seems insulting that Sis's boyfriend gets more attention than her towering achievements and her seismic conflicts. But the film's main preoccupation is her romance with Onassis Huck Beeler, which begins at a cocktail party in 1957, where the ship magnate boasts a few feet away from her husband that they are destined to be together. Back in 1977, Callis tells her staff that Onassis's ghost still visits her every night, so maybe she was obsessed with him until the end. Maria Callas was celebrated and talented in her own right, so it seems insulting that her boyfriend gets more attention than her towering achievements and her seismic conflicts. The Maria and Ari scenes are less opera than soap opera. That's not to say that they aren't engaging. Knight has written countless lines of spiky, witty, quotable dialogue, and it's never a chore to watch a beautiful actor wearing beautiful outfits in beautiful Paris locations. But there is no urgency to Maria. We all know from the opening scene that Kisa's week is not going to end with a miraculous comeback, so her physical and mental wanderings don't have any tension or momentum. The film is also too adoring and reverential to let us sympathize with its supposedly fragile heroine, unusually for someone who is drug-addled. And terminally ill, Jolie's Callis never looks anything less than magnificent, and she is always supremely dignified, poised and confident, out-quipping everyone who crosses her path. "What did you take?" asks her butler after his boss has been to her well-stocked medicine cabinet. "I took liberties all my life," she replies, "and the world took liberties with me," as that unlikely exchange might suggest this cuss is an icon rather than a human being. Larraín and his team refuse to take her down from her pedestal, so they don't imbue her with any of the vulnerability or the playful vivacity that the real Callis has when she winks and laughs at the camera. In snippets of footage over the closing credits throughout the film, various people draw a distinction between Maria, the woman, and Lalis, the superhuman diva. Its title notwithstanding, Maria is definitely about Lalis, this film directed by Pablo. Larraín, written by Stephen Knight, produced by Wanda Dios, Lorraine Jonas, Dornbach, Lorenzo, Mieli, Pablo, Janine Jakowski Marinade, Simone Gani, starring Angelina Jolie, Pierfrancesco, Favino, Alba, Akak, Bill, Jercody Smith. MC Cinematography, Edward Lockman, edited by Sofia Sassos Production Company. Fentel, The Apartment Pictures, Compen Film, Fabala Film, Nation Entertainment. Distributed by 01 Distribution, Italy, StudioCanal, United Kingdom, Ireland, Germany, and Poland. Netflix United States release states August 29, 2024. In Venice, November 27, 2024 in United States. January 1st, 2025 in Italy. February 6th, 2025 in Germany. Running time 124 minutes. Countries Italy, Germany. United States languages English. So guys, this is the review of Maria movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.